Today's review is sponsored by 31 1980s horror movies for Halloween. This October, I will be counting down my 31 favorite horror movies from the 1980s. Stay tuned for that, but until then, let's get on with the review.
Watch it, Alan. I'm shooting.
Ichi the Killer. Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, I'm still not in my typical location. I'm still dog-sitting Sadie, because she's still a very good girl. It's still been a very busy couple of weeks because of all the dogs and because I've been working on the ranking series for October. Stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to that this year. But while I'm here, we're going to continue my little tribute to Takashi Miike, and today we're talking about my favorite movie directed by him. Ichi the Killer is a very violent, sleazy yakuza movie. I've never viewed it as a full-blown horror movie. It is extremely violent and full of nudity and weird sex stuff, but I've never seen it as a horror movie. But it's one of those movies that has been adopted by the horror genre because what other genre would have this movie? That's why I love horror. We accept anyone. Given this movie's reputation for being violent and sleazy, Ichi the Killer is both what you think it's going to be and not what you think it's going to be, which is what makes it such a unique viewing experience. We follow a scarred-up yakuza member named Kakihara. The boss of his gang has mysteriously disappeared, so he begins to tear through the Shinjuku underworld, beating people down and torturing people in order to find his boss.
Kakihara! What the fuck do you think you're doing?
Just a little torture.
But he soon learns that his boss was brutally murdered by a killer named Ichi. We then start to follow an ensemble of characters. Kakihara and his gang as they search for Ichi, a former cop who has been manipulating Ichi in order to destroy the local crime syndicate, and Ichi himself, who's this disturbed individual with violent tendencies. We also find out that revenge isn't necessarily Kakihara's reason for finding the murderer. Before I start gushing over how much I love this movie, I do have to mention something that's a problem. The CGI. There's a lot of blood in this movie. I'd call this an epic of splatter and arterial spray. There are some good practical effects in this movie, and a lot of them have more blood than a person would actually have in their body. But there is CGI used in the movie, and a lot of the CGI is cartoony. Keep in mind, this had a budget of $1.4 million. That is a lot of money, but not as much when you compare it to other movies that came out in 2001. The year after, in 2002, Spider-Man came out, and that had a budget of $139 million. It's still a detriment to Ichi the Killer, but it doesn't ruin the movie. I will always prefer practical effects over CGI, but I do view CGI as a valuable tool. CGI will never ruin a movie for me, even if it's not the best like in Ichi the Killer, especially when the movie is so fun and over the top in its violence. So we've gotten that out of the way, now I can gush about this flick. The violence and sexual themes make this a fun movie in a sleazy way, but it's the characters that bring everything together. First we have Kakihara, who is sadistic. But what makes him so fascinating is he's a masochist. He gets sexually aroused by feeling pain and getting beaten up. In the first act, the reason he wants to find his boss is because his boss was able to beat him up better than anybody. And when he learns that his boss is dead, he fears that he'll never be able to find anybody to give him that sexual gratification again.
There's no love in your punches.
But then he learns about Ichi, and he thinks that he's finally found somebody who can give him his ultimate sexual thrill, in a masochistic sense.
It's been years since I felt this mix of anxiety and anticipation.
Then we have Ichi the Killer. When we hear about this character, and we see the mess he leaves in these crime scenes, we have this image in our minds of this terrifying guy. Ichi is 100% a sadist. You picture someone along the lines of Freddy Krueger, or the Joker, or Pinhead when you think of Ichi the Killer. But Ichi is actually this timid man who cries a lot.
Hold on a minute. You crying? You are crying.
I'm not crying.
You'd think that would be a major letdown, but it actually makes the character more interesting. Ichi is a sadist with these incredible martial arts skills that can kill anybody instantly. But he's also quiet and shy. He's mentally unstable, but not confident. He's so messed up in the head that even though he says he does not want to kill people, and even cries when he's killing people, he still gets off by killing people. Ichi can get hard, but he can't blow his load unless there's violence involved, whether he's watching it or committing it. Violence is the only way he can achieve sexual satisfaction. Plus, his brain has been fucked with a lot. Ichi is being used as a tool by Gigi, played by Shinji Tsukamoto, the same guy who directed Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Ichi, pull yourself together!
Gigi is using Ichi as a tool to take out the local crime syndicate. He messes with his mind, creating a past for him, which makes Ichi an unpredictable killing machine. So we have Kakihara and Ichi, two characters with violent urges on a collision course with each other. This makes for a very interesting movie.
Chief! Chief! What happened?
He showed up, finally.
No one is safe in this movie because of these two violent characters. At its core, Ichi the Killer is about two people who have taken their sexual urges to such extremes that it destroys everything around them. In regards to bedroom activities, you have kinks and you have fetishes. Kinks are things that people like to do, but they don't need to do when conducting in sexual activities. Fetishes are things that people need to do in order to get sexually aroused. Ichi and Kakihara have gone so far beyond fetish that everyone around them suffers. This movie does not hold back when it comes to its violence and sexual themes, as long as there are no genitals on screen. That's an interesting thing about Japanese cinema. You can show almost anything you want to in your movie, but the stuff between the legs is not allowed. There are exceptions, I'm sure, but for the most part, that's the case. Other than that, there's a lot in this flick. The torture is brutal. Men being hung up by hooks, women getting their nipples cut off, hot oil being poured on people, and two characters that get off on that in different ways.
I will slice you to pieces, Miss Tachibana.
What?
Ichi the Killer is splatter entertainment at its finest. I've been saying violent a lot in this review, but that's the best way to describe Ichi the Killer. Violent. If you're not a fan of films that do not care how bloody or sexually explicit they are, then this is not the movie for you. But if you're a lovable degenerate like me, then I can't recommend this movie enough. And with that, let's get to the Grindhouse rankings. We've got a body count of 25, give or take a few kills. It gets messy seeing as in a lot of these scenes there are body parts all over the place. The kills consist of, but are not limited to, slit throats, decapitations, needles to the face, and being cut in half horizontally. There's a lot of nudity in this flick, mostly female breasts, but also some butt cracks of both men and women, plus quite a few sexual themes. Both Kakihara and Ichi are interesting characters. There aren't any good guys in this flick, just people who are less sick than others. The violence is epic in this movie. Some quality blood splatter here, except for a few scenes with poor CGI. But luckily the movie around the CGI is good, so it helps us get past that. The movie doesn't hold back, and that makes for quite the viewing experience. The story is interesting, not what you expect from the plot, but that's what makes it interesting. The ending is a little confusing, but it's still good. A perfect way to end this movie. I'm giving this a 4.9 out of 5. The only thing preventing it from getting to the 5 is the poor CGI, but that's just a little blemish in an otherwise great movie that is so over the top. Highly recommended to horror fans and exploitation fans. As always, I want to thank all of you for continuing to watch and support this channel. Please leave a comment down below, let me know your favorite violent gangster movie, and stay tuned for October where I'll be counting down my 31 favorite 1980s horror movies. I'm gonna be promoting that in the next few videos. Yes, that's right, I'm a whore. This is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die. I don't find that pleasant. No erection.